What Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just said about gold and silver is only partially true, but it is one of the most fundamental truths about gold and silver that there is out there. I'll explain in this video as we explore.
This legislation will authorize money services business like check cashers or PayPal to transmit and accept payment in gold and silver. That means these precious metals can start functioning like real currency again, not just investment vehicles for the wealthy.
That is what he said in a press conference after he signed a bill back in late May that would recognize gold and silver as legal tender in Florida and make them free from sales tax. That's very powerful. It's what his actions are that really speak volumes. But what he has just said recently is quite intriguing indeed. Just the other day, as of yesterday, as of the recording of this video, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, says this on his X account: "The trajectory of gold and silver equals investors lacking confidence in fiat currencies," which is an indictment of the Fed. That is quite profound. And I do believe that underlying all of this, with the rising prices of gold and silver, that is a fundamental truth. In the end, that it's really foundational. Of course, there's a lot more to it than just that. And we're going to talk about that here in a moment. But first, I want to remind you, channel sponsor Summit Metals, and gold is still not out of reach for even the most basic budgets out there. In the smallest budgets, you can accumulate gold. And what better way than to have a wallet that is exclusive to Summit Metals? It's their own making and invention, and you can fill up this little wallet with these little 1 gram bars. I'm almost done. Need 2 more. Eventually, I'll get there. But check out Summit Metals in the link in the description of this video below. So, Ron DeSantis is partially right about gold and silver and what the trajectory is. Now, really, that is the key word here. The trajectory is a continued movement upward in price. And it is an indictment of the Fed, but it's even more an indictment on the federal government spending so much money, which pressures the Fed to print more of it to meet the spending needs. And notwithstanding the increased debt and deficit spending that's going on, that is out there, but money is needed for a lot of these government programs, and that's exactly what's happening. However, the recent rise in gold's prices since 2022 is primarily due to central banks continuing to accumulate gold at record paces to the likes that we've not seen since 1967, folks, and that's continuing. There's more pressure there for these central banks, because they are de-dollarizing. They are losing faith in the dollar around the world, not just here in the United States. And there's multiple different reasons behind that, and that's continuing. All the things are still in place that are outside of even what the Federal Reserve is doing and inflationary pressures. But it's geopolitics. There's all kinds of uncertainty in the world these days, and there's domestic uncertainty as well, too, for a myriad of different reasons. But nonetheless, there's the supply chain issues that are taking root as well, too, that are only exacerbating an already inflamed market, and where the metals are going up in price, and faith and confidence in government and institutions is falling across the board. But nonetheless, really the crux of the matter is inflation. And inflation is essentially the loss of value of the dollar and its spending power. And gold and silver are being buoyed up by that inflation amidst all the other factors that are coming into play here. But nonetheless, I think it's intriguing to see him make this post and talking about gold and silver and how it really is an indictment on the Fed. The Federal Reserve is a private entity, but I like to consider it a quasi-private entity or a quasi-public entity because its board members are confirmed by the Senate and appointed by the president. It's political, and it always really has been, even though it's meant to be independent, but because they are appointed, And there's different governors that are appointed that have certain ideological viewpoints and towards monetary policy and the like. Either conservative or left-leaning these days. But that is what we're dealing with, I think, with the Federal Reserve now, to some extent or the other. Of course, board governors and chairs can change their stance in the midst of becoming or in the midst of that role. And they do typically. Essentially, they're corrupted by it, I think. But I think the Fed itself as an institution is corrupt. And in all reality, I think it should be abolished. And I think that's why states like Florida, who has gone above and beyond by becoming one of the strongest states to indeed remove the dependence on the Federal Reserve by allowing gold and silver to fall under their constitutional mandate, which is Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which equates gold and silver to money for transactions between the states and within the states. And I think that is quite profound, and they've made that move. And so DeSantis has done this. Under HB 999, gold and silver coins that meet specific purity standards can be used for payments. And they got to work that stuff out, and I believe that's going to take probably a while, several months here, maybe even close to a year. In fact, it says that Florida stands firmly for freedom, economic self-determination, and resistance to government overreach. But for too long, outdated regulations and unnecessary sales taxes have made it impractical for Floridians to enter the gold and silver market. So he signed HB 999 to change that, initiating the process to recognize gold and silver as legal tender, and with rule ratification from the legislature free from sales tax. These new rules would have to be ratified by the state legislature. If lawmakers agree on those rules, it would take effect on July 1, 2026. So likely that would mean that probably constitutional silver would fall in line with that purity standard and recognized, as well as bullion like what you see here in gold and silver coins. So this is profound. And in an environment where we're seeing gold and silver make news on their own, it's nice to see high-level elected officials like Ron DeSantis make mention of it over on his X platform there, and I think it is quite profound indeed. And I think it's great because in all reality, more attention to gold and silver as sound money, especially wealth outside of the system, I think is something very, very positive for sure. But, again, you look back and see that when we hold gold and silver, no matter what the price of it is in the markets, and right now the price is mostly been going up. It's been a wild rally for gold and silver, which is good to some degree. But when the grand scheme of things, we should be thinking beyond just what the price is. We measure our wealth in ounces, not necessarily dollars. I mean, dollars obviously are something we cannot avoid. We need them to actually buy these metals. But when you buy and hold gold and silver, including the premiums that you pay for them, you are holding wealth outside of the system. To me, that is one of the most powerful reasons to have gold and silver, because you're going straight back to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, which our founding fathers designated to be what money truly is. Sound money, constitutional money. And that's what it's all about, folks. That's why holding it is so powerful. And you can go beyond that to over 400 times in the Bible where gold and silver is mentioned, one way or the other. So it is a long, enduring form of wealth that is unchanging. And in the world right now, here, in the last few months, where cryptocurrencies have been hit pretty hard, gold and silver have come out and standing on their own to be what they have been for thousands of years. In part, at least. Take away the craziness of this market and the massive increases day over day, week over week, and now month over month. You strip all that away, gold and silver go down to their brass element, pun intended there, and that is wealth. It is what it is. It's not there to make you money, even though you can make money off of gold and silver if you started investing this year or last and held on until now. You'd be making pretty good money. But I'm encouraging my viewers to think beyond that. Think really the basal truth of what Ron DeSantis had posted here again, because this is quite profound. The trajectory of gold and silver. You know, he's not talking about necessarily price, although he's reflecting it by sharing a post about gold soaring to $4,200 for the first time in history. But the trajectory of it is not so much as a great investment, but they're lacking confidence in fiat currencies, which means that in a sense, this is the most stable store of value over the long course of time than anything out there. That's right. It's not there to make you rich. It's to preserve the riches you already have with gold and silver. All of this gold and silver that you see here was bought before the big rally that we're seeing now. And I may be benefiting from it in terms of what the price has gone to, but I'm holding on through this rally, on through to the other side. And I think that other side means wealth preservation. I don't want to get rich off of gold and silver. I just want to preserve the richness of what sound money truly is. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Hope you found this video informative, insightful, and educational. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.